All right, thank you all for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. I'm Ludmila Janda. A lot of people call me Luda. And I'm a data scientist at Amplify. Amplify is an education publication or publishing company. We focus on K through 8, and we have print-based, online, and hands-on materials for students. And I focus on our science product. So that's why I have Amplify Science up here. I think it's really fun and great, and I mainly play a lot with our clickstream data, so looking at how students and teachers are using our product. And so just in case the title was confusing to anyone, I wanted to make sure to define Glowup. You know, it's something that the youth are saying these days, and it's a play on the word grow up, but you're glowing, you know, you're getting better, and I think nothing better defines that than this wonderful series of images. And you know, it's a ggplot talk, so we have to reference Hadley at least once, if not more, or as much as possible. So I thought I would start with that. So essentially the purpose of this talk is to show you ways to make your graphs look spiffy and nice using ggplot and some ggplot adjacent packages. And then I'm going to go into showing some really cool submissions that have been done to Tidy Tuesday and some of the things that people did in order to make those submissions. So let's go ahead and get started. So what is my motivation here? About a year ago, I was kind of new to r stats Twitter, and someone really famous in the data viz world, Edward Tufte, tweeted this out. And I think it was essentially more trying to say, like, you can't make perfect graphs in R because of annotation. But in general, people took it as, like, you know, you just can't make great graphs in R, and you have to do other things as well. And then all these people started tweeting out really cool data visualizations in response with like nice annotations and things. So I tweeted a joke about this saying, was Tufte just trying to get the world to show the really cool visualizations that they made in R, right? And I was retweeting Bob Rudis's graph that he made where he was saying, well, you know, it's a shame that Tufte said it's impossible to do this with just R. I guess I should delete my blog post, right? And a lot of people tweeted really cool visualizations. And around this time, I started kind of seeing all these possibilities with ggplot. I think I wasn't new to R at that point, but I was kind of getting to this point where I was starting to be able to make more advanced visualizations, you know, in various ways. So what's interesting is that after that little tweet that got 31 likes, a bunch of us got blocked by Tufte. I don't know, he's a grump. But I think for a lot of us, we got to see some really cool visualizations as a result of this one tweet. So, you know, one of the real great powers of R is actually visualization. You'll hear that argued all the time, right? But what I find really interesting is that although that's the case, graphs like this absolutely persist, right? We see them everywhere. We see the graph and immediately we know it was made in ggplot because we see that default gray background with minor and major grid lines and, you know, arguably kind of small axes, labels, you know, things that people like to say we can improve. So I think that the best thing you can do, you know, that's super easy if you just don't want to do anything else, is just use another one of the themes that comes straight out of ggplot. You don't even have to load a package. So we can already make this look so much nicer by using a simple theme like this theme minimal. I love it. I use it all the time. So I think that's, you know, something super simple you can do to already make your graph look much nicer. But something else you can do, and especially in a workplace, this is a really nice move, is you can make your own theme. If you type, question mark theme, you'll see all of the things that you can edit about a theme, and you might feel super overwhelmed because absolutely everything on a graph can be changed in some way in terms of size, color, shape. Absolutely, like the options feel endless, but often there's a small group of things that you're actually going to want to change. So there, often you're going to want to change the size of the axes labels, the text, and maybe add some different color, add some different fonts. So if you'll indulge me, I'm going to be playing a little bit with the Diamonds data set. So I use this Luminari font and some color, sky blue and gold. This, really not the best actually looking thing, but I think it's kind of fun. So here I applied this theme, and already my graph is looking, a little shinier, a little glowier, whatever. So now I want to start moving into talking about different graphs you can make, right? A lot of us default to making a box plot when we want to look at distributions by some categorical variable. And I get it, it's what we were all taught, but I think there are a lot of other better options. Sorry, just to back up, one thing I wanted to say is another thing you can add to make your plot just look a lot nicer is to just add commas when you have thousands places. Like, it makes it much more readable using the scales package, and then using this label equal to comma. So anyway, so we can find other ways to visualize distributions. One thing that people tend to go to is a dot plot, which I like. I think it's a really nice option. And it lets you start seeing some kind of nuances in the data that you don't see as easily with the box plot, right? But one thing that I feel like for me, I always get a little confused when I look at these. I think we're not used to thinking about distributions in this kind of split symmetrically funny way, and also in this orientation. And so often I'll think like, oh, the wider the spread, that's like bigger variance around something. I don't know. I think that looking at these visualizations can be a little confusing. So something that I really like to use is the ggridges package, and I find that super, super nice for showing for visualizing distributions. And one thing I want to point out is that as soon as we see this, we start seeing something really different than we saw with the dot plot or the box plot. We see that a couple of these cuts have kind of bimodal distributions. And for me, that's super useful. I work with education data a lot. So, if I'm looking at test scores, a bimodal distribution is something that's concerning. So it's really nice to be able to see something like that. This package is awesome. You can do so many things with it. Like, for instance, you can do something simple like this, like add a median line, which is really useful visually. You can color the distributions by color. Here I just cut it off to the price being at 2000 to kind of see this color. But I've seen this used in really cool ways. One was with weather over months, and you could see the color really added a really nice effect. You could see that temperature really popping out. So I think this is a really nice option. And here I want to point out I'm using the Verities package, which is a really nice package to use for colors because it is really colorblind friendly. It has a lot of different options. It does a good job representing spectrums of data and letting you see them without using this default rainbow spectrum that a lot of people use. So I think it's a great option. Here's another example. You can color by the quantiles, you can just do a lot with this one. I think it's really fun. Another thing you can do that I really like is adding this rug that's actually every single observation. I think this is really nice because sometimes it can be really, you can realize that, oh, I have a really sparse number of observations in some area, Or I think this is cool. You know, we see that we don't have a lot of observations at the higher price range for the fair cut, but we still have a lot at ideal. Another thing that really popped out at me is that there really aren't any observations here for any of the cuts at around $1,500. So this is a mystery. You guys should go out and find out why that is. I don't know yet. I just made these slides and noticed that, and I was like, whoa, that's interesting. I wonder what it is. Is there something wrong with this diamonds data set that we've all been using all this time? Anyway, so one last thing that I wanted to show you, this is called a Raincloud Plot. I think it's really fun because it shows both the distribution. You can add a point for the median. Here I have a half a standard deviation going out either way because otherwise one standard deviation like extended way past 0, and I just thought it would be easier to show it like this. I think this is really cool. And by the way, I've included links to all of these in my slides, and my slides will be on GitHub. But this is not an actual package at this point, but I'm using a blog post that someone made about how to do this, so it was really cool. So I think it's a nice option, and it's actually not too hard to implement. All right. So this is that, you can see this is essentially the code for it. This geom flat violin is something that someone made. It's not in a package at this point, I don't believe. You know, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're essentially using that and a couple other geoms in order to achieve this plot. So I think it's pretty cool. So now I want to move on to talking a bit about Tidy Tuesday and showing some cool visualizations from Tidy Tuesday. So Tidy Tuesday is kind of led by the R4 data science community, and on Mondays, I believe, actually, they'll post data. And then on Tuesday, people will tweet out really cool visualizations that they've made. And I've learned a ton from following it on Twitter and just getting to see what people come up with, not just in terms of visualization even, but also in terms of data cleaning. And even what kinds of questions people come up with the data. I think it's really interesting what people have done. And then there's this really fun Shiny app, actually, that is just tidytuesday.rocks, that you can choose the data set that you're interested in, and then you can sort by most likes, most retweets, most recent, and see lots of things. So this is how I stumbled upon this really cool graph from Gil Enriquez, who made this really fun visualization of the number of guest stars in The Simpsons per season. And what I think is really, really cool about this graph is that, you know, this is just a really simple graph, right? It's just a line graph with some dots. But it looks amazing, right? Because he's been able to use a really cool font and just layer it on top of a fun image, and it like immediately is a completely different graph. It's totally how to glow up, right? And also I want to point out that a lot of people will add their Twitter handle as a caption on these graphs. I think that's a really good idea. You know, gets your name out there, and it's nice to see and easy to credit if you want to use it in a talk or something like that. So yeah, I just want to point out here that Gil used the GG image in order to superimpose the graph over the image. And another really cool thing is, I don't show it in the code here, but they also found a way to make the lines look hand-drawn by kind of jittering them. I thought that was really cool, really creative. The code is all on his GitHub. So I wanted to point out that there is another really cool package for image manipulation that I really like, that's kind of newish. called Magic, using this image magic approach that I've actually used this package a bit for deep learning, like image pre-processing. It's really useful for that as well. But it lets you make these composite images that are really fun. So this was actually an example from their vignette, but I put myself in this tunnel of data instead. But you can also make really nice images like this. You can put text on the images, which is really nice. So like, you know, when Jared tells you like 3 weeks before a talk, like, hey, I heard you're the September speaker for the meetup, you can make an image kind of, you know, celebrating that experience. So I'm showing this to you because you can also use image magic to composite, to put together graphs with images. And this was a graph that I made actually for Tidy Tuesday. And I just, you know, you looked at the titles of all of the episodes and just did a string search to see how many episodes there were for each of these main characters. And we see that Homer takes the lead. And then you can, you know, here I added this fun image. There are a couple of different ways that you can do this. This is the most simple is to just do this image composite. But there are kind of more advanced ways too that mean you don't have to like save the image out and then, yeah, make a composite that way. But I think the Magic package is really fun and cool, and I highly recommend it. And then I wanted to point out that, you know, just like that line graph, you can even just make a pretty simple Stackbar graph look super cool, even just by picking a fun font and a color package. And there are a lot of really great color packages. This is like actually a Game of Thrones package. For this graph, I used a TV colors package that actually had like the Simpsons main colors as a palette. There's so many color palettes out there these days, you know, but I think it's really fun. And I actually was in the room with Mara when she made this. She got us together. She's another R lady in New York City. She got a group of us together on a Saturday, and we played with some Tidy Tuesday data and made graphs. And I highly recommend, you know, like getting together with some friends and making some cool visualizations. Maybe not on a Saturday morning, but, you know, whenever you want. This is really fun to see. And I also really love the title of this graph. I think it's really great when people use these like action titles or titles that pull some piece of insight from the graph. Like this, a goat named Arya. Am I saying that right? I don't watch Game of Thrones. Should I have admitted that to y'all? No. Is it Arya? Jared doesn't watch it either. Okay, good. So then she uses the subtitle to explain what the graph is, right? I think that's really nice. So moving on, so now I just want to talk to you about a couple kind of ggplot adjacent packages. So this is actually not from Tidy Tuesday, but something that I made based on something that I made at work. But the data that I use at work is, you know, I can't use publicly. So this is completely simulated data, but imagine that these are students that took a pre-unit assessment and a post-unit assessment for each of these units. And just to be incredibly clear that this is very fake data, you can see that these units are very made up. And so I really like using the alluvial graph in this case. I find it really useful because we can see the flow from one state to another. I will say that sometimes I see alluvial graphs used in ways where it's not exactly flow from one state to another. Sometimes it works, but I think they really shine when you're showing some movement from one, you know, point to another. And I love this because I can immediately see that, you know, for instance, for the unicorn traits and reproduction, a really large amount of students started out at level 1 but went all the way up to level 4, whereas in potions, you know, it was a lot more of the students just went over to level 3, not as many got up to level 4. I'm able to see these insights really easily, and I can explain this graph really well to coworkers that aren't, you know, on the data science team, but want to see these insights. So I think it's incredibly useful because it's super intuitive and useful for people to see. I want to talk through how to make it because I feel like the vignettes aren't great, and I spent like a week trying to make my first one. And this is using the Alluvial package, but I want to point out that first you need to have your data set kind of wide by the state that you want to, the 2 states or however many states that you want. I'm saying state, you know, like state of being or point or whatever, that you want to have basically these things, right? So if you start with your data set wide by that, you can use this ggalluvial toLoadsForm command, and then it will pull together and shape the data set as you need it. And it will actually label the columns with the fancy labels that don't seem to like make a lot of sense, but are really, you know, what you end up seeing in the code. So I think that's nice. So you have the alluvium, which is just the individual or whatever that is flowing from one state to another. And you have in this case, the assessment is that thing that those states, that doesn't get relabeled. But and then you have the stratum, so those are those levels in this case. So then I go ahead and make the graph here, and then you see like my kind of theme and stuff like that. But you can see at the top that you can just set stratum to stratum, alluvium to alluvium, fill to stratum, label to stratum. Like it's pretty straightforward once you have the data set in the right shape using that toLoadsForm function. It actually makes it pretty straightforward. I'm going to show you one more alluvial graph. I think this one was really cool. I saw it going around Twitter recently. This was made by David Newserling, and it was actually tracking his experience on the job market. So this is his first contact in the first stage, second stage, and the outcome of interview process, right? And just for people that might not be able to see in the back, the yellow is ghosted. This kind of purple pink is no role, green is you got an offer, orange is rejected, and blue is withdrew. So immediately we can see that there's a lot of ghosting happening, which you know, isn't great. The other cool thing is that we can see where we can track the offer all the way back. So it started out here on the job site, and then led to a phone call, which led to an interview, which led to an offer. So I think that's really cool. In this case, I want to point out that there weren't so many, as you call them, alluvia. So he was able to add this kind of gray line around to really separate them out and show, and I think that that's really useful for this visualization. Versus mine, where there are a lot of students, and you just wouldn't see it. But in that case, you're kind of seeing the flow from one state to another. So I think it, you know, depending on the context, it can work either way. But I really, really like that. And so I want to point out once again, this is from his blog post, and he's also using this toLoadsForm in order to set everything up. It's a little bit different than mine, just because you know, the visualization is a little bit different. So once again with ggalluvial, there are a lot of options. It's a really cool package. Definitely recommend playing around with it. But for some reason, often it gets explained using this Titanic data set. It's confusing. I don't know. So I would actually look at this blog post or my slides, but this actually made it much more easy for me to understand how this was getting made. So now I want to go back to a couple cool Tidy Tuesday graphs. And this brings us all the way back around to Tufty's tweet, because we're starting to look at annotations in texts. And not just annotations with straight lines, but actually curved arrows, which is pretty cool. And this was fully done in R. So this was the Tidy Tuesday week where they had game ratings, video game ratings. These are PC games. And these were the kind of top 10 publishers. And then you have the meta score going from 0 to 100 on the x-axis. So I think this was a really cool graph. I really love that the average by publisher is labeled, as well as the overall average. And then we see the worst game overall, which is Rogue Warrior. I've heard that there's some pretty funny videos of Rogue Warrior. Haven't watched them yet. I've been preparing this talk. But and then the best games overall is the Elder Scrolls series, Skyrim, right? So I think this is just a really fun visualization, and those annotations are there. They look great. So this was from Tonya Shapiro, and this is. I will say that the annotations are a little bit. You have to do a little work to get them, but just only she uses this ggforce with the geom_mark circle. That's the only non-ggplot package she's using, just to make that circle around the group of games that are the Elder Scrolls series. And otherwise, you can see like all of these annotations are written up. Then she sets the locations of all of the arrows and adds them to the plot. So I don't want to end this talk without talking about Cedric Scherer's amazing visualizations. These are just two of them, but like someone called him the king of Tidy Tuesday on Twitter. Actually, it was Tonya. And I thought that was great, so I thought I would put that here. And if you want to see like the real power of what you can do in R with like making amazing visualizations, these are great examples. This was a data set about bird collisions, and one about anime. And I think it's just really cool. He has a blog too, just to see what he makes every week is really impressive and really inspiring, and I think makes me really excited about making my own data visualizations in R. So check him out for sure. Oh yeah, great ad. So this is a cool new package called GMPoint Density that lets you blend both a scatter plot and get that density. So I think that's really cool. This is a brand new package, so I thought I would just add it at the end in order to include it. So in summary, I want to say change your background. If people can spot that you made your graph in ggplot because you have that default background, you can do better. And you can do better super, super, super easily, right? Especially in a workplace, you can pick your work font and kind of make those font sizes better. You can annotate away. Tufty be damned. Like, you can do it. It might be some work, but you can absolutely do it. So yeah, use ggplot and ggplot adjacent packages like ggridges, ggalluvial. Oh, I didn't talk about gghighlight, but that one is really cool. I have that one lets you highlight just a specific part of the graph, both even whether categorical variable or continuous. It's really cool. Check it out. You can add images that really transform your visualization. I would suggest following Tidy Tuesday. I find it really inspirational. Have fun. Eat some pie. Don't make pie charts. I don't know what that's about. So big thank you to Samuel Crane. He's my boss at Amplify, and he's taught me a ton about making data visualizations. Also thank you to Sebastian. He's my partner. Go work with him at Vroom. He's awesome. He actually inspired me to learn R, and I'm incredibly thankful. Thank you to R Ladies New York City. I'm on the board, and I just so appreciate everything that I've learned from being part of R Ladies. It's just a really awesome group. Thank you to Jared for making me give this talk. And thank you to all the Tidy Tuesday contributors, especially the people that I included here that so kindly let me lift their code and their images for inspiring me. A lot of people make really great visualizations for Tidy Tuesday, and it's really fun and exciting to watch, and I so appreciate it. And thank you to the wider RStats community, such an amazing community. I feel so lucky to be part of it. And thank you all for coming out tonight. That's my time. Do you have any questions? Yes.
I saw that hand first, and I thought.
Yeah. I wanted to say, if you wanted to see an example of GG highlight, here's an example. I highlighted just the ideal.
She highlighted the ideal in case
Yeah.
you didn't hear.
Okay, sorry.
Just a quick one. What was the site that lets you select and look at the Tidy Tuesday?
Oh, yeah. It's tidytuesday.rocks, which is easy to remember. Yeah.
Tom, I think that's all you're going to go next.
Thank you. I'm Earl Crane, so I usually use image magic from the command line interface.
Dang, you're fancy. That's impressive.
I find it easier. I also find base graphics easier, and I use email, so I use our help. A lot of them use our help much anymore, but
I love it.
They don't know our help.
I love.
I use the image magic command line interface usually.
That's great.
Have you used it? Because I'm wondering if the
Yes.
interface is easier to use. Maybe I would consider using it sometimes.
I think the benefit, so everyone heard the question, right? He has the mic. I think the benefit for me really is using magic in R is just that I don't have to leave R. I'm like Jared, I don't like to leave R for anything, tweet, email, text yourself, I don't know, do everything in R. I believe in that, or I like it. I'm also just not as fast, I would say, with command line. And I think it's very usable in R. Yeah. Was that the answer?
So thanks for this great talk. I really enjoyed that. My question is this. I remember hearing somewhere that Harley doesn't want to change the default background from gray.
Yeah.
But I don't know why.
So,
or is it so that you can give this talk and just
yeah, I think it's, who knows why.
I thought since you know what he looked like in his PhD years, you might know.
I only know that because of Twitter. So my joke was going to be that he leaves it like that to make us want to change things, like make our own theme and change things. I do think some people have made the argument that the gray does make some things stand out a little better than having a white background. And I do see that argument. I think that the problem is that it just, with the minor and major grid lines on top of that, it just starts looking a little junky, right? So, yeah, I don't know. Does anybody have an answer for that? Does anyone have a line? No? Okay.
I don't know if that's the answer, but I think the trellis from the S+ days, I think the original trellis had a great background.
Interesting.
So it's respect to that. I don't think Hadley's a path-dependent guy.
Especially on the base stuff.
And there is I'm pretty sure they had a good reason for
I mean,
I'll take it. Can
Just
you
feel
repeat
free
what
to-
he has answered so everyone hears about trellis? Did everyone hear him? All right, you're good.
yeah, okay. The original, you know, before R there was S, and apparently there they used trellis.
I don't see Hadley doing it for that reason.
I don't know when.
Any other questions? I can't see half the room over there.
Right, I feel terrible. I totally neglected
Can
y'all.
we get this column taken out next time? Any questions over here? Yes. Can you shout it rather than?
Or I can.
Sure. Thank you for the talk. One question I had was sort of what is the best way to find packages in the GG universe?
Yeah, what's the best way to find packages in the GG universe? I mean, what's the best way to find packages in R in general, right? It's like totally overwhelming. There's so many. Like all the good ones aren't on CRAN, right? No, I'm just kidding. So I think one thing is Tidy Tuesday, actually. You start seeing like, oh, how did they do that? Oh, that's a cool package. And you start seeing that package getting used more and more, and you're like, oh, that's nice. Oh, that reminds me, actually, there is a new RStudio way to make alluvial charts that they just put out, but I didn't use it for this talk because I found it a little confusing, and they used the Titanic example again. And I just didn't have a lot of time to, you know, I'd already made these graphs, and I didn't have a ton of time to delve into that, but there is, I think Thomas Lund Peterson was the maker of that new. So yeah, anything that's like RStudio and Doris is often very reliable. And then I think looking, you know, seeing things on Tidy Tuesday, and in general, like Googling things, you'll find good blogs. You really will. You'll find like really nice blogs, and you're like, wow, someone made an amazing post about this. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Thomas again.
Perhaps you will indulge me with an advertisement at this journal. Because you know that the best packages aren't on CRAN. In fact, the pizza full package is not on CRAN. It's been written.
How could it not be?
The problem is it's too trivial because it's only the pizza full data set and the example. So if someone's making a data visualization package or some model library and needing an example data set, we can collaborate. You can put in the pizza full as an example. And that's how we'll get the pizza full data set into CRAN.
Let's get it done, y'all. You won't have to look at diamonds anymore. I'll use pizza next time.
Give it to Thomas Mock.
Yeah, give it to Thomas Mock for Tidy Tuesday. All right.
So in your mind, what are the limitations? Like, are there things you'd love to do and just haven't been able to do in R?
I think I'm my own biggest limitation, because I think it's pretty limitless. Although I will, there's some things that can get frustrating, right? Like you make a figure bigger and it makes the text smaller when you save it out, and like you're just constantly rendering in, trying to change little things, and it's not as kind of straight out of the box or immediately changeable as if you like put an image into Adobe Illustrator and start editing it, right? But at the same time, once you've written the code to do it, you can do it again, and that's really exciting. Like I lifted a bunch of slides here from my own work, or other work that other talks I've given or things like that, and I often will start making the same kind of chart or the same thing, and I can just lift the code. I have themes written for the work that I'm doing. I don't have to go into Adobe Illustrator every time or something like that and actually, hand change things. So I think for reproducibility, it's huge. Obviously, if you're doing a lot of one-off things, yeah, there's a big trade-off there. I do think, but I think for a lot of us that are spending a lot of time making visualizations in R, I think I think it's pretty limitless and pretty amazing and powerful. You just have to be willing to like sit there and change numbers 500 times to see what works perfectly. Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
I'm not sure if I'm new to this or if anybody else is seeing this problem or an issue. I found that making charts in ggplot on RStudio, it looks really nice on the screen. But sometimes when I try to do the same thing in a shiny environment, it renders differently or the sizing is a little off. Maybe because new to this, but I'm wondering if you have any suggestions as to how to work on this.
Yeah, it's a good question. So the only pointer that I have that I learned recently is that there's this Cairo type that you can use to save PNGs out with really high resolution. That's really nice. That will also maintain any funky fonts that you've embedded. That's really cool. I don't use Shiny a ton myself, so I don't have any good Shiny tips. Does anyone have any good Shiny tips in terms of making your visualizations look like how you want them? I hear you though, like I struggle with that a lot. Saving an image out and then I open it somewhere else and like my font is gone or things aren't the size the way that I kind of wanted them to or resolution is a little off. There are some blog posts about that, but yeah, I don't have a perfect answer.
Can you shout, Kat? Or?
I was just going to say, if you're knitting, or if you're using it through notebooks, you might be the easy way to the chunk option.
Yeah.
Set the image output size. Yeah, so that's yeah, you can all do
For the DPI.
Yeah. So if you look at my slides, I set the image size. I actually set the figure width and then the figure aspect because then it lets you use this like magic, proportion, the golden ratio for like how a good rectangle. Sometimes you need to break that, so I set that in every chunk because sometimes I needed to change that to make it look better on the slide. And then I set DPI globally, I'm pretty sure, to try to bump up the resolution without losing too much. But when you change DPI, it changes the size of things too. So it's like this whole balancing act. And then suddenly you're like, crap, I need to change my theme, like axis title size or whatever. Like yeah, that is frustrating, I will admit.
There is, I think in Knitter, there is a GitHub issue talking about this.
Yeah.
Where Yiwei explains the ratio versus DPI. I know because he was trying to explain it to me. I don't fully get it, but maybe if you find that GitHub issue, you'll get it better than I do.
I think there's another question.
Can you shout or not?
I was just going to say, if you're using this for a Shiny app, one thing that I sometimes like to do with my ggplot is use the plotly package.
Oh, yeah.
And the function called ggplot-friendly and turn it into an interactive plot. Since it's going to be in a Shiny interactive interface anyway, rather than a static ggplot.
Yeah, I've used ggplot. I need to learn it before we use it properly, but
Interactive always works better.
Yeah, so, sorry. No, the answer was just in case you didn't hear it, starting with Plotly and then moving from Plotly to Shiny. So you can see in Plotly what the graphs look like, and Plotly is awesome. I highly recommend it. Yeah.
And interactive graphs will always fill the space available in Shiny better than ggplots will. So.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I didn't talk about interactive graphs at all, or any of the GG Animate work that's being done at RStudio that's really cool, because I don't really use it, but I'm sure that there are very good use cases for it, that aren't like racing bar charts or something like that. So,
Can you
yeah.
shout or do you need the mic? I can shout. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. I'm just kind of curious for your work. Are the kids who are K through 8 consuming your ggplots, or are adults
No, yeah.
consuming them, or both? And
None of the kids are looking at my ggplots, but I wish they, maybe someday. No, so all my work is really working with our product managers, project managers to get insights about our product, how it's being used. So no, children are not looking at those. However, we did, if you were at New York R, you saw me talk about our unit that we made where students, middle schoolers learn about data visualization, and they use a tool that we created that was very much inspired by R and the tidyverse and uses like tidyverse verbs, and that's really cool. And also now at RStudio, they're developing tidy blocks using using kind of a Scratch-based interface, and it's very functional. You guys should go try it out, play with it, like show your kids, get your kids to use it. Because I know Maya Gans, the one that did her summer internship at RStudio, it really wants people to try it out and break it and figure out what's wrong with it, and like, you know, write up issues and pull requests and things like that. So check it out, tidy blocks. It's really cool.
Well, I think some of those like ggplots with images in the background would be really cool for kids.
Yeah.
I think like really identify. I remember when I was in middle school, I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah. I think we all think it's pretty cool, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Cool, any more questions? Yes?
Do you have any tips for integrating some of these custom plots into a corporate package or something like that?
So definitely just having a theme to start off as your corporate, package. So you can have your corporate fonts, your colors, things like that. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by like.
I guess I just mean with like rolling it out and how to get people to use it and things like that. I don't know if that might not be an issue here.
Yeah, so you're thinking like you have a big data science team and people are making all the same kind of graphs and you want them to use other things?
Oh, no, just like, just sort of getting a buy-in to doing this, to sort of understanding the value of having this sort of custom corporate branding and how to tell people we should use it also. Like I work in the city government world where this all is not really happening.
Yeah, I mean, my answer to that is just make the graphs for someone. Like we recently, someone on our research team wrote a white paper and I made a bunch of graphs using our like company fonts and made them look really spiffy. They all been made in Excel. And now we're working with a marketing designer. And I think just like letting people see like, hey, I can make all this super easily. I can change this immediately. I can change this color. Like I have the code. Oh, you want to change this data somehow? That's fine. It's not a problem. Like people will see that power and get excited by that. Yeah.
Bring them here. Come here and see.
Yeah. Whoa. Yeah, so Kat's talking about the BBC put out a really cool, what would you call it, like?
It wasn't just a guidebook, it was more than a guidebook.
Yeah, it was amazing. Like all about using R to make data visualizations. The Economist also uses R and has their own theme, and yeah, Bloomberg, like a lot of big name places now are using R and have made extensive themes, and not just that, but like guidebooks of how to make visualizations, what kind of visualizations to use for what kinds of data, right? Like, oh, there's a distribution, use a ridge plot or a dot plot, don't use a violin plot, things like that. So that's really true. There are a couple of good options. I actually put the BBC one, and I think I put a link from The Economist too, as resources, additional resources in my slides. I have a couple links to additional things. So, all right.
Last one. Anyone? Was that the last one, or is there going to be one more? There's time for one, and one only. Okay, we could use that time to buy Luda a beer at the bar.